What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Growth Hack Franchise Marketing Unleashed. I'm your host, Marcus, founder of AdCloud, where we help franchise owners scale smarter with data-backed strategies that actually convert. Today's topic might raise some eyebrows. Do you really need a full website anymore, or can a landing page do the heavy lifting and maybe even do it better? So let's go.
All right, Marcus, this whole ditch the website idea sounds a little bit aggressive to me, but clearly in something. Why do you think so many businesses are asking, do I actually need a full website anymore? What's going on here?
Yeah, I think, in e-com, we've used landing pages for many, many years, but now in service-based businesses that are looking at generating leads or driving that traffic, traditionally, they've always done a website. They've always had this big, massive, multi-page website, and people go and they get just mind boggled. They're looking at this site and they're like, I have to click through these pages and I want to learn about the services, but now how do I get back to finding the location I want to book at, things in that nature. Whereas a landing page is specific to the location, it's specific to the offer or the service that you're driving them into, and it really hones in on the funnel and makes it an optimal and efficient experience for the end user rather than sending them down 20 rabbit holes and saying, hey, thanks for visiting our site. Now try to figure out how to get to the endpoint. If your end goal is to book an appointment, you should be able to do that in 3 steps or less, not 17 or figuring that out. And so that's why landing pages are extremely effective. They also allow you to understand data better and test more.
So I know that you have an amazing talent for building beautiful websites. I mean, I've seen websites that you've built. I'm sure you probably considered doing an entire website for, let's just use Decalash, for example. What made you go from let's build a whole beautiful website, brand experience type thing to let's just do one page and see what happens?
Yeah, I think naturally it's normal for most businesses or brands to have some side of static site, right? Where it's informative, it helps with SEO, all of those things. But when you start to look at paid media, and this is with the brand Decalash that we manage, that is where you have to squeeze out every bit of dollars that you're spending and find the highest conversion. And when we tested on the main site, it was lackluster. I mean, we were talking about booked appointment conversion rates of like 15%. So it was really, really bad. And one of the clear reasons behind that was that when they would go to a locations page, it was just kind of like information dump, like word vomit. And there was no real hierarchy. There was no real clear. It was like, hey, if you want one of these 17 lash styles, here's the price for all of them. When realistically, most of the new consumers didn't know what they wanted. They didn't know anything about lash extensions in that sense, outside of maybe strip lashes, right? And so they wanted to be told, here's where you should start. This True Express, this is where you should start. And you can get that for $79.99. Fill out this form and book your appointment, right? Like it's far more direct to do that versus saying, hey, come and figure it out yourself. We live in a society that's like, hey, I want instantaneous, all of these things. Even if you look at like food, the most common commercials we see are fast food, right? When you look at that, they're always promoting something specific. Their commercial is not, hey, look, we've got 18 different hamburgers on the menu. Pick one, right? It's like, pick this one. It's got the best margin. It's the best starting point, whatever that reason may be. And it's far better to send them down a unique funnel than to go and say, figure it out on your own. And we just want your money, right? Like people want that unique experience. Now, you can't just throw up a landing page and pray. You have to actually, there's got to be some legitimate thought process behind what is in the hero, how they're digesting the data and information for those, because there are those people that want to understand a little more, and you have that below the fold. But then at the top, there are those who are like, okay, cool, $79 offer. This is the form or this is the booking experience, and it's done. I don't have to do anything else.
Okay. So, real talk. What do you think that the actual franchise website, the full website, is needed anymore?
Yeah, I think they are needed. I think what's broken about the traditional franchise, or what I should say, franchisee website hierarchy is that many, think of it this way, for franchisors who have 120, 180 locations, it is much simpler to create a template and duplicate. As you bring on new locations, all of those things. The problem is a franchisor often thinks from the global level, whereas a franchisee realistically has to think from a local level. And that's such a big transition because, look, there's paid advertising, and you could function and probably be successful just off paid advertising. But why would you want to miss out on the local SEO and all of those things that build that other revenue stream? And so, realistically, what we see the primary problem is being that you go and let's just use Nashville, right? Let's say there's a Decalash Nashville, and if it's just a single page that's got all of their word vomit on it, it's not going to rank very well. There's a brand called Lash Lounge that does really, really well. And that brand, they have multiple pages. So when you go to that location's page, they have a page specific to the offer. They have a page that talks about each lash style. They have a page full of FAQs, all of those things. And that's going to help on the SEO side. So, if you're going to do it right and build it out and have 7 to 10 pages inclusive just for that specific location. And if you're not going to do that, then you probably should rely more on a landing page style format where you can constantly test and figure out what the best flow is and conversion flow is.
So, who would be benefiting from these landing pages? I assume not all businesses could benefit from this type of layout. Who could also be using only these landing pages?
So I don't know that there's realistically, actually, I would argue there's not a brand out there that shouldn't use landing pages. I think every brand should use landing pages. I think every brand should have a base website because that's where people go to learn, or at least a certain percentage, right? If they're going to learn new things or they're just in the very early stages of exploring whatever that is, or after they've booked. So, like, they've gone through the landing page, they've gone and booked the appointment. 9 times out of 10, they will go to either social media or your primary website to learn more at that point. They're already interested, but now they're going to just read about the services and all of those types of things. Every business has a website. I think that's just kind of everyone builds. It's what everyone goes to. What every business doesn't do is create landing pages and have different funnels. Don't just stick to one landing page. They curate landing pages based on every service because we run ads focused towards every service to figure out which one converts the most. And sometimes it's demographically. We know that our older audience prefers this specific product and service. So we're going to send them to this landing page. Younger prefers this one. We're going to send them to this specific one. If we're targeting, I'll use like True Express as a service that's focused on quick and efficient lashing. You're in and out in an hour. Refills are done in 30 minutes. So we target a lot of moms, right? Because we understand like time is of the essence. They need to get in and out. They can't do a 3 hour lash appointment. When you start to really go into those micro points and really figure out how do we leverage those and leverage that data, it becomes a lot more effective for you versus like going now, because I'm not saying for everyone listening, don't go and build a landing page and just recreate what's on your website and word vomit again. Make it specific, figure it out. Even if you're in retail and you're selling t-shirts or hats or whatever that is, pick your best selling hat, build a landing page around it that features an offer for it and focus on that. Run your ads for that. Once people buy, then promote all the other fun stuff, right? You can have an upsell after they buy that says, hey, how many times have you seen that? Add this to your order and get 20 additional percent off or whatever that is,
All for it
right?
every time.
Yeah, right. But because it's the lower, I always call it the gateway drug. If you have that lower piece and they're like, okay, yeah, you're going to get more people to buy into that singular hat that I can buy for whatever, $30. But now I'm already in there, and they're saying, well, you can add this beanie for add a second hat, right? Or add four, every time I'm buying a protein or something like that, every time I buy it, it's like you can get four more for, half the price. And I'm like, well, that kind of makes sense. I should do that. So like stop trying to get the full sale up front,
Right.
divide it up, and then have those things on the back end and track it and make sure there's still ROI. But again, landing pages is where 90% of the money is made.
Okay, so I feel like this might be a silly question, so don't laugh at me. But my question is where, because I know you said you need a website and a landing page. So where do each of those live? Like if you're running ads, does the ad lead to the landing page? Does it lead to the website? Is your like Google My Business, does that have your website?
So when you're running ads, I'm talking Meta, Instagram, Google, you're going to run those to a landing page. That landing page can be in WordPress. We like to use a platform called ClickFunnels. And GMB, really, you want to link that to your site. You don't really want to link that to a landing page unless you have a solo offer, just because that's a lot of organic traffic that's going to be clicking through your Google business profile. But for paid media, you want to direct them directly to those landing pages. And there are a ton of landing page builders. There's some directly in WordPress, Squarespace. Again, ClickFunnels is probably one of the most universal. There's one called Landing Pages. There's plenty out there that you can kind of leverage and start learning to build and using their templates. But realistically, you should be linking to that and tracking and testing. And it makes it a lot easier to test on landing pages because if you're, think of it this way, if your website is themed, and it's got the same color scheme across it, all of these things, all your buttons are the same color, right? If you go and change the button color on one page of that site, it's going to be kind of weird. If I'm going, and you're like, oh, everything's blue and white. And then I get to this one and it's like gradient, yellow and greens. But on a landing page, that's what you should be testing. Does an orange button convert better than a blue button versus a yellow button? Does the font size in the header convert better at 72 versus 38? Should that font color be a little different? Should it say something different, right? If you're using a platform like ClickFunnels and things, you can run A/B tests and you can say split the traffic 50-50. So every click that comes, it will automatically split and it'll say, okay, this person is going to the A test, this person's going to the B test. And then it'll correlate that data and say at the end of the 7-day test, how many more converted on this one version, how many more converted this one, and then then you mark it. You say this is the winning version, this is what we're going for, and then you create another test. Now, don't test too many things at one time. Make sure if you're going to change a button color, let that be the only change for 3-4 days, and then go back. Okay, now we're going to test headline copy in that sense, or images, things in that nature. But it's really just, it's really, really simple to go into those platforms. They are easy to build out of and do that. But paid media should always be going to a lander, unless you just have a website that for some reason converts extremely high. And those do exist, but I would probably argue that it's 2% of websites that actually convert at that high metric. And most of those have some type of what we call VWO, which is like visual word optimization, like, and they're tracking every single thing that happens on those pages. So they've optimized them over time. And you can use something like Hotjar, right, where you can track and see how people scroll, what they're clicking on, how they're interacting.
Okay. Okay, so for people that are picturing like a super basic, kind of like a contact us type landing page, let's clear the air. What do these landing pages actually need to include, and what do they not need to include that websites usually overdo?
Yeah, so like contact us like a lead form, I'm interested in the offer, or just like contact us to call?
Just what should they be putting on their landing page? Like, I just think a lot
Sure.
of people would picture like just super basic, like not enough information. How do
Yeah.
they find that fine line of giving enough information without overdoing it like a website can do sometimes?
So when you think about a landing page, you want to think about what we call the above the fold or hero section, right? That's when you first go there, whether that's on mobile or it's on desktop. Realistically, I say you need to design mobile first, desktop later. Above the fold is the first thing they're able to see. And that is where your offer should be, and it should be very clear. Within the first 5 to 8 seconds, they should understand exactly what that page is going to entail, right? I can buy this product. I can book an appointment for this service, and this is the amount. Below that, you need to focus on pain points and benefits. That is all your landing page should do. Your landing page is not there to be a dissertation of all the reasons, why and why not. It should be the top 3 to 5 benefits and pain points. Are you experiencing X? Here's why this helps. Are you experiencing Y? Here's why this helps. Very, very simple in that. That doesn't mean simple design. It doesn't necessarily mean ugly design. It just means there should be very clear. Try not to write a lot. So maybe you have an image on the left, and on the right, you have a subhead and somebody that says, red light therapy does X, right? And this is what it is. Green light therapy does X. Infrared sauna does this. These are the benefits of that. Bullet point as much as you can because people read bullet points much easier. They're more apt to read those and actually skip the headlines if they just see the bullet points versus a paragraph. I am the same way because I just feel like I can skim it better. I'm like, okay, someone took the time to highlight the things I should read. I don't want to go through two paragraphs and try to figure out what are the bullet points of that paragraph. And so try to do that throughout. But realistically, a landing page is addressing the pain points and giving a clear call to action. If you tackle those two things, which every business or at least successful business should be able to do fairly easy, if you feel like you can't do that, you probably need to do some work on what are the benefits and what problems are you solving. Because if you can address those really quickly on a landing page, you're 90% there on getting them to convert.
Okay, let's get into the fun stuff that everybody wants to know. What kind of conversion rates are you actually seeing on these landing pages compared to full websites?
Yeah. So, early on, you heard me mention that with Deca, we were at like a 15% conversion rate, direct booking. And those were pages we didn't control. We had no real ability to navigate. But Google traffic versus social traffic, there is a hierarchy and a value state there. With Google traffic, we average anywhere from about 75 to 81% conversion rate with a landing page. So vast difference. With social,
To that 15%.
right. Yeah, yeah. So that's a lot of added dollar revenue. The dollar goes a lot farther. And then on social, we average anywhere from about 48 to 52%, which is pretty good for social people who weren't looking because it's disruptive, right? They weren't looking for the service or product. And we see that across pretty much all of our brands. Obviously, there's an ebb and flow based on market and price of intro offer that'll affect those things. But 10 times out of 10, landers perform, and we always test it. We always go back to testing and say, hey, maybe we should test the regular website straight to booking and kind of see. We just did this with a new company called Beam. Similar, we started out and we're like, let's just test it and see because there was no historical data. They had never had an agency test that theory. So I said, well, let's get a good baseline and see what you're converting at now. We only did this for Google, but for Google, they were converting at it was like 7%. It actually was worse than Deca.
Oh my gosh.
Like a 7% conversion. There was a massive amount of abandoned carts for booking Asana services. And we changed to landing page. And with Google now, they're all, I think, on average, converting at about 71%. So again, it just goes to speak to it's okay to test the theory. 9 times out of 10, we've seen landing pages convert much higher and be much more specific to the offer and what you're talking about in the ad copy. And that's the biggest thing. You have to connect what's in the ad copy to what's on the page versus talking about an offer in ad copy, sending them to your homepage of your website, which mentions nothing about the offer. That's where that disconnect happens.
Okay, so last question, kind of looking more into the future. Do you think that we're heading towards more of a landing page first world, especially for franchises and service businesses? Do you think websites are kind of becoming the new fax machine?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting analogy. I think static websites there's this site builder, and I'm going to completely blank on his name. He has become really well known for developing these phenomenal, integrated, interactive sites. And I think that's what the future is. I think people want to go and have an experience. If you think about Apple, probably not early days, but mid days, right? When they started to really kind of roll into these things, what was everyone talking about? The experience when you went to the site, the blow up of the headphones, how it all kind of, as you scrolled, everything was twirling and changing and going inside, and all of these unique experiences and 3D experiences. That is realistically where I think sites have to evolve to because we all want something immersive. And that is a supporting role to your landers. Now, I think landers are evolving as well. They're becoming far more integrated. It used to be very block, like left, right, vertical, stacked. Now you're seeing like really pretty landers be built and all of these types of things. Still focused on conversion factors, but we're just beautifying a little bit instead of being so traditional. But I think that's it. I mean, there's going to be sites that are static and stale, and I think those are the ones that are going to struggle. Google's going to rank them far differently. They're going to focus on experience. We're already starting to see that. Google is starting to rank focused on experience, actual experience versus content necessarily. Content is still an important factor in copy quality, but the experience when you go to that site and what that feel is, I think is where we're going to see that evolve. And I'm excited to see where it goes. But if you feel like, hey, I have one of these static sites, and for many of you, you may not know. I think there's probably 80% of the audience that's going to watch or listen to this and be like, I have no idea. I haven't tracked one data point. I don't even have Google Analytics set up. I don't know. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. That is step one for everyone is if you're not tracking, go and track and then really look at it and say, okay, what is our bounce rate, right? Like if you traditionally go and your bounce rate is 90%, there's a problem. People are coming and they're leaving because they're not finding a clear answer within the first 5 to 10 seconds. You have to start to look at those things to understand missed opportunities. It's not that no one wants to buy your products, it's because you haven't taken the time to understand what they want and meet them where they're at instead of asking them to come all the way to home base, right? So I think that is what we have to look at. That's where that change is going into immersive experience, especially as we see AI and virtual happening. I mean, 20 years from now, we're all probably going to be wearing VR headsets and saying, go to decalash.com. At some point, it's going to become that intuitive where you can do that as a business owner. You need to be prepared to pivot and make that move. But look, if your website is confusing, slow, or doing way too much, it might be doing more harm than good. Simplifying your online presence doesn't mean cutting corners. I think it means cutting the fluff. But thanks for tuning in to the Growth Franchise Marketing Unleashed. If this episode made you rethink your whole website strategy, you're not alone. Hit subscribe, leave us a review, and send this to someone whose homepage still has a welcome to our website banner. We'll see you next week.